Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Two Old Bloggers with your hosts, Darren and me, Dave. In today's episode, we're going to tackle a few hot topics in the world of Vikings football. First, we'll dive into the Vikings quarterback situation, discussing the aftermath of Kirk Cousins' injury and considering where the team goes on from here. They have a few choices. Let's see how they play out. We'll also look at Jaren Hall's potential as one of those choices and as the new starter and what that all means. Next, we'll dissect the Vikings' recent trade deadline deals. We'll discuss the arrival of Josh Dobbs, another one of those said choices, and the departure of Ezra Cleveland, my boy, and share our thoughts on whether these moves were a hit or not so much. We'll find out. And finally, we're going to preview the upcoming game against the Falcons. This game could be a major turning point for the team, and a lot hinges on rookie Jaren Hall and how he performs. We'll also take a look at Atlanta's side and what to expect from the Dirty Birds. We're going to find out. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's get into it on Two Old Bloggers. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. It's been an eventful week for all of us, I'm sure. How are things in the Great White North there, Darren?
They were going great until I saw half an hour ago that Christian Darrisaw is questionable for tomorrow's game with a groin injury. That made me happy.
Yeah, my exact response was, "Oh shit." I want to thank everybody that's here right now. We've got our standout regulars. We have Norspius. We have Brian, Davy Chains, the wonderful and beautiful Miss Mary, Mr. Bob Swede. We have SKOL for Life Barber. Hey, Barber, good for you to join us. Benjamin Marcoux, good for you to join us. I believe this may be the first time you're here. If you are, welcome, welcome, welcome. We have My Worthless Opinion. Let's see, who did I miss? Purple Poopy Pants. What a great tag name. SKOL for Life, of course. And anybody else that I missed, we want to welcome you to the show. This is Two Old Bloggers, where Darren and I have been commenting publicly on your Minnesota Vikings for over 2 decades apiece. There's a lot of knowledge and a lot of killed brain cells between the two of us in that time period. But we love the purple as much as you do. And we try to bring a well thought out Sunday morning talk show style of show here to you so that we can talk about the team we love. Benjamin from Vermont, I bet it's beautiful up there this time of year, if all the leaves have not quite fallen yet.
Head down to Montreal there. Not too far.
That brings us to theme 1. Since Dave talks too much. Where do we go now?
Yes, Dave. And what a week, like you said, it's been. Nothing's been happening in the Vikings. Vikings community, right? You know, you get a big win. You go into Lambeau, you get a big win. Then your starting quarterback blows out his Achilles. And then you end up trading for potentially his replacement, at least for this year, and you trade your starting left guard, or somebody who was your starting left guard like 3 weeks ago. Just all kinds of crapola going on, and I think it's got to acknowledge, or I want to acknowledge that. Not a news flash, is that Kirk Cousins going down with that Achilles is a horrible development for the Vikings for the 2023 season, at least. You've got your Kirkistanis, you've got your anti-Kirkers, people who think he can do nothing wrong, people who think he can do nothing right. There's people in the middle, kind of like us, I think, Dave. But whatever you feel about Kirk, and really the narrative on Kirk has really switched, I think, like 180 in the past year or so. He's gone from like a guy that people made fun of all the time to, and you see it all the time, that thanks to the NFL, the quarterback show, and some of the things he did last year, he just turned into this kind of lovable, much, at least beyond the Minnesota Vikings locker room, a guy who's like now widely respected for his toughness and the way he plays the game and all that sort of stuff. But, regardless of what kind of quarterback you think Kirk Cousins is, you got to acknowledge that on an average day, since he's been here, here's what Kirk Cousins is going to do on an average day. He's going to throw for 230 yards at least. He's probably going to toss a couple of touchdown passes, and he's going to complete minimum 65% of his passes. That's on an average Kirk Cousins day. That's pretty good. Some days, there's been plenty of games during the season, and we've seen it through 5+ years, where he does much more than that. There's occasionally some games, not very often, where he does less than that. But average, pretty good stats. And that the Vikings offense is generally going to function. They're going to function strongly. They're going to be a threat to move the ball and score on a consistent basis. And without Kirk Cousins in there, there's just no way I can see where this offense operates like that, is where you're going to see that kind of consistent production from the quarterback in particular, game in and game out here. And if you don't get that, and considering our running game has not been very good this year, that leads me to, you're probably going to see less big plays, less first downs, less successful drives, which is going to lead to less scoring. And that's going to negatively impact the Vikings season this year. It could lead to less wins, maybe a whole lot less wins than what we were trending for. And so that really sucks.
Well, when we get to the number portion of this in theme 3, you're going to see a stark difference between the projections of PFF and what DVOA has us at as of right now. Because as of right now, Kirk Cousins has played 95% of the season so far. It's before his Achilles blew. It was getting impressive, especially considering our slow start.
It was. That's the bad news, Dave, and it is not, and it is bad news. But that's how I see things. I think that's a realistic way, in my view, of how to look on things. We've got to expect that the offense is going to be, it's going to be perhaps painful to watch at times, and frustrating, and particularly frustrating because that offense, even though it started slow and they had all the turnovers and all that sort of thing, it was starting to, the last 2 games with Kirk dealing, the offense looked just so much better, even if the point totals that we were putting up weren't, any drastically better. But that's the reality of things, I think. But let's turn to Jaren Hall, who's going to start on Sunday against the Falcons, and what that means. And again, he's not Kirk. He's not as experienced. He hasn't been through the wars. He's a totally different quarterback. But there are things to like about him. If everybody here probably watched at least some of the preseason where he played, a fair amount of the time, and clearly he's a much more mobile quarterback than Kirk. So he's got the ability to evade pressure when he's pressured, do it with his feet, with his legs, something that Kirk cannot do. And he's probably, he's better able to make plays off schedule, plays on the move than Kirk does. And I think that's, and that's going to really, I think, shape how the defense, how our offense is going to go, and how they're going to work to Hall's strength going forward. I think what really, I also think that good things are that even though it was 2 months ago, Dave, he did play quite a bit in the preseason. He got a lot of snaps. He got a lot of reps there. It was an up and down preseason. But I think in his third preseason game against Tennessee, you kind of saw the Jaren Hall that, at least in glimpses, you saw the improvement from game to game, and you saw him do some things that made you think that, this guy might have something. Certainly, like you said before, Dave, or you mentioned to me online, he looked like miles ahead of Kellen Mond when
I thought so.
was in there. Yeah, I think so. Hall looked like a real NFL quarterback at times. And that against the Cardinals in that final preseason game, very sharp first drive to start the game. They get a turnover off of a strip sack, first pass, touchdown, nice, right on the money to the running back. He led a nice 2-minute drive at the end of the first half to get us some points. Looked very good in the first half. Second half, things weren't as pretty, but again, you got to look at who he's playing with too, right? But I think that, and a lot of trash, a lot of guys that aren't in football anymore.
Who are some of those individuals?
Well, like Vidarian Lowe was his one of his tackles. Aliudo was his other tackle. Later in the game, you had Chris Delorio was playing in there. Alan Ali is one of the guards. You had Abram Smith, Dwayne McBride, the Dykes kid they brought in as your running backs. He was thrown to Thayer Thomas, Blake Prohl, Lucky Jackson. He was under pressure a lot. He was playing with third and fourth stringers. Now he was also playing against a lot of third and fourth stringers, but still, that when you're playing with that level of talent, there's only so much that you can do yourself. And I think that he's really suffered with who he was playing with. But I think, again, there was glimpses, particularly in the Cardinals game, where you could see the good things that he could do, some of the strong throws that he made in tight windows. And I think that's going to help him. What also helped was him getting in the game at Lambeau last week, Dave. Very, very tough situation for him to be thrown into. At Lambeau, both of his drives were deep in Vikings territory. And I got to give Kevin O'Connell a credit here, because during that game, if you're watching the game, you remember Jonathan Vilma said, man, just hand the ball off, Kevin O'Connell. Hand the ball off, kill off the clock. Don't have this guy step back and throw, because it's not worth it. You just got to kill the clock and let your defense play. And Kevin O'Connell did not do that. He had Jaren Hall, and it was only 11 snaps, so it's a small sample size, but he had him step back to pass 5 times. And one of the times was a strip sack, but that was not Jaren Hall's fault. Christian Darrisaw whiffed badly on that play, and Hall never really had a chance on that one. But he did have him drop back to pass on third down 3 times. Hall made a very nice throw and read to Hawkinson that got us a big first down in that second to last drive we had. First down allowed us to kill clock, forced that team from Wisconsin to use all their timeouts. That was a huge, huge play in that game. And I was watching him in the huddle, Dave, and you could see that he wasn't looking like this, he wasn't shouting. He had his hands on guys' shoulders. He looked very calm, collected, just handing things out. And he didn't look like he belonged there. He looked like he was not a deer in the headlights kind of look, and very calm. And again, Kevin O'Connell had him throw the ball at important moments in a tough place to play against a division opponent on the road. I think that is going to serve him well in the Atlanta game, another road game. And because Jaren Hall himself can have some confidence to say, hey, we won last week, and I didn't just hand it off to Madison and Akers all the time. I had to throw and make some throws and help us kill the clock and help us win that game. And he did that. And I think that's very encouraging and going to help him tomorrow against the Falcons. And I got to give Kevin O'Connell credit for doing that, because it would have been very easy to do just what Jonathan Vilma said. Hand the ball off, and just kill clock, force them to use. You're not going to get first downs, but you're probably not going to turn the ball over, but put it on your defense. Kevin O'Connell didn't do that. And Kevin O'Connell said this week that was a purposeful thing. That
Jonathan, thank you for becoming a member.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. Kevin O'Connell said, I wanted him to go in there and play football. I wanted to give him the chance to do those things, and he did. And if it had gone wrong, and it went pretty wrong with that strip sack, but if the Vikings had lost because Hall had made a couple of turnovers and stuff, Kevin O'Connell would have got crucified for it. But he did not care. He felt that there was an opportunity there and that this was the way that they could win the game. And that kind of shows, I think, as well, that what Kevin O'Connell's been seeing from Jaren Hall since they drafted him, that he had enough confidence in Hall to, in that situation, to put the ball and the game in his hands by making him throw it. I think I find that encouraging, even if it was just 3 series and the final series was in victory formation, right? Where Hall didn't have to do anything. But I find it encouraging. It's pretty, when you get a situation, tomorrow, like Hall is tabula rasa. He's a blank slate. We don't know what we're going to get, but it's a bit of an exciting time in a way. When you get a new quarterback, first start, what's he going to do? How's he going to perform? What's he going to look like? Very, very exciting and a bit frightening as well, because it might not go all that well.
No, it might not. Delta says 3 for 4 for 27 yards were effed. LOL. Hey, if he throws 75% tomorrow, we're in great shape. That would be awesome. Yes. I agree. It's going to be interesting. I thought he came in and did himself well straight off the bench. And you got to remember, it's straight off the bench. There's no warm-up. There's no weekly prep. There's no taking all the snaps. There's no very little planning for the game plan because it was all revolving around Kirk. And everybody thought it was, well, it should be. I mean, Kirk never gets hurt, right? And so that's the way it was. He came off the bench. He held himself well. I was impressed with the young man. Now, we'll all see what happens tomorrow when he goes in and he's the man and has been practicing that way all week, right? And how Kevin O'Connell adjusts the offense towards him. We're going to see something totally different. I mean, the 11 snaps he had, you could probably throw him out the window. To see what we really have, it's going to start tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to it. Hey, this kid could be our next quarterback. We don't know yet. And so
that's right.
We've got to hope he does well, because if not, we're going to other alternatives. And I'm not sure how great those alternatives are going to be for this season. So, and with that, theme 2. Trade deadline deals.
Yes, like them or hate them, hot or not. The Vikings were lots of speculation going in, maybe not as much last week after we beat or the week prior. As the Vikings got to 3-4, I think there was a little bit more of a feeling that they weren't going to be. Oh, Orpheus just became a member too. I thought he was all.
Orpheus. Appreciate it, buddy. You rock. Hey, just to let everybody know, you can become a member at any time. All you got to do is, I know, especially on the computer side, browser side, there's a little button that says join. All you got to do is join. The first level is real cheap. We do open it up every once in a while to have the members come on. We will be doing more exclusive member content. Almost did one this week, but there's only 3 of you. Now there's 5. And so this will be picking up, especially as we get into draft season, because Tyler wants to get all his draftnik stuff out there first to you guys. So, well, welcome everybody that's come in since the first time I shouted everybody out. I see Dan's here and everybody else I've missed. Aaron, what do you think of this beautiful weather? Absolutely great here in Austin, Texas. Unlike, I'm sure it is up in Yellowknife. How cold are you up in Yellowknife right now, Darren? Before we start,
not too bad. We're like -8 Celsius, so which is a little bit higher than normal this time of year. Got the snow on the ground; it's here to stay for a few months. But yeah, Aaron must be happy with the results of today's Texas game. Another close one, but they won. So,
Okay.
Yeah, trade stuff. So, yeah, first thing off, of course, the Vikings. I wasn't expecting them, I guess, to be as active as they were, or at least I thought there was a possibility they'd get a quarterback, but I thought they might pick one off the street as opposed to trading for one. But anyway, they got Josh Dobbs from the Cardinals, and I think overall, I like this deal. And I don't, I don't feel that Dobbs. My view on Dobbs is that he's not. I think this would be the view of the vast majority of people, is that he's not a guy who we can consider as we're looking at him to be the starter in 2024 or anything like that. But I do like the fact that what we got him for, we got him, and then we got a 7th, and we gave up a 6th to the Cardinals for it, and like we were talking about before, that's almost like free, right? Mm-hmm. And for some bizarre reason, based on playing time, and I don't know, I haven't seen the particulars on that. Maybe you have, Dave, but based on playing time, we actually could get a 6th rounder from the Cardinals out of this deal.
It changes. It's almost literally free. And the 6th rounder we traded for him was the Carolina 6th rounder. So it's going to be, or the 6th rounder we got, no, disregard. The 6th rounder we got for Cleveland, which we'll talk about next, is the Carolina one. But we had traded one of the lower 6th rounders for him, and it could easily come back to where we get a 6 back, and it's literally almost a free trade. It's negligible. The value between a 6 or lower 6 and a 7th is basically a 7th rounder, and we know most 7th rounders don't even make the team. So it was a good value.
And even like depending on how the Viking seasons goes, beyond here, and we know that the Cardinals probably aren't going to win too many more games. And so all their picks are going to be really low or high, depending. So I guess the range between the 7th, the 6th that we gave up and the 7th that we get from them might be 10 picks in the difference, really, when you 10 to 15 in the difference. So really not much. It's pretty similar. But with Dobbs going again, the compensation was right. I think that what that trade also told me is that maybe Nick Mullens is not as close. He's eligible to come back next week. Maybe the Vikings feel that he's not going to be ready to come back next week, or maybe quite a few weeks from here. Back injuries are always tricky. And so you couldn't go into with a team like the Vikings, who are 4-4 right now. They've got the seventh wild card spot. You've just lost your starting quarterback, but you can't say the season is over. The locker room's not going to accept that. The ownership is not going to accept that. I don't think Kevin O'Connell and his staff or Kwesi Adofo-Mensah can accept that. You got to do what you can to keep the season running and try to make the playoffs and put up your best effort to get there. And I don't think that they can feel, if Mullens is iffy on when he's coming back, you couldn't go into the next few games with Hall and Sean Mannion as your 2 quarterbacks.
not Mannion. Hall's fine. Mannion's no.
Well, but yeah, Hall's fine until he isn't fine, right? If he gets hurt,
but we already know Mannion isn't fine. So yes.
So so trading Dobbs does one thing: it strengthens your quarterback room if Mullens can't come back at all, or several games past when he's eligible to come back in IR. The other thing that it does is that, hey, the guy has started 10 straight games. He's actually been, turned out his numbers, his play has been better than quite a few starting quarterbacks in the NFL now. I was trying to think of them, but there's some pretty well-known names that he's got better stats than right now. So it's not like he's a total scrub. He's got his issues, but he's a guy who can come in and can start for you and gives you a chance to win. And the other thing is that the Vikings, Nick Mullens is only signed to a 1-year deal. Next year, whoever your starting quarterback is, you're going to need a backup. having Dobbs here for the second half of the season, that Kevin O'Connell and the staff, and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, they can look at him, and they've got a few months to assess whether he's a guy that they should invest in to be a backup for whoever starts next year. And I think that's a important point and a good thing to have as well.
I think so too. Now, one of the reasons I think they went with Dobbs versus a Mullens type. Mullens is more like Kirk Cousins. He's not as mobile as
he's not.
We'd like in a quarterback, or I think not so much that we like that. I think Kevin O'Connell wants. I think Kevin O'Connell wants to go to a more mobile game, and he's going to have to. He's going to have to change it for Jaren Hall to start off with to maximize Jaren Hall's effectability. He's going to have to plan for more mobile stuff. We see RPOs brought up. We see all sorts of stuff. Well, when you get Josh Dobbs is that mobile quarterback. So he's going to be doing much of the same stuff that Jaren Hall would be doing, that I think Kevin O'Connell wants to do if we get draft a quarterback next year, because we've talked about it for years. We want a more mobile quarterback. The more successful quarterbacks can not only pass, they can also run. Well, now we have two in the house that can do that. Now, are they going to be superstars? Jaren Hall's an unknown. Dobbs is no, but he's moving from a bad team in the Cardinals to a great situation here in Minnesota. And we're not just talking the facilities. The Cardinals organization is all sorts of messed up. So he now gets to go and be a backup. And I view him as a backup. I mean, he's played for, 7 teams since he's been in the league, something like that. He's bounced around. Smart kid, rocket scientist, as we all know. But he could be that next person behind either Jaren Hall or if we draft somebody next year. Because there's no guarantee Kirk Cousins is coming back. There's no guarantee they want him back with a bum wheel. We know that torn Achilles takes a while. We do know Kirk Cousins was playing the best football of his life in these last 2 games. Would have loved to seen it continue. But now he'll be 36 next year. All that money, all that stuff that he brings with him. Do we want that? And they may go with somebody in the draft that they think could be the next guy if Jaren doesn't work out. Or they don't want to spend that much money on Kirk Cousins again or take the chance because he's not going to be fully healthy until next year. Yes, handicap discount, Aaron. Yeah, if they want to bring him back, they definitely need that. I would think.
Kirk ain't taking a handicap discount or hometown discount or any discount.
But I think that one of the reasons they got Dobbs was because of the mobility and the ability to run a mobile quarterback style of offense.
And I think that the Vikings also looked at it because there was lots of names going around, Dave, about who the Vikings were looking at. And Kevin O'Connell talked about how you should see the texts I've been getting. We don't know what those were, but it was ranged from pick up. So getting Dobbs, they clearly felt that he would be an upgrade or just as good as signing Colt McCoy off the street or Joe Flacco off the street or whatever. And I think that, looking at the talent that they have, where they are in the season, they didn't feel that, and where they are in the competitive rebuild, they also didn't feel that they didn't want to give up significant draft capital to go get a guy like Ryan Tannehill, who's still hurt right now and probably wouldn't be able to play this week and next week either. So how much help is he going to be? Or, the whole Kyler Murray pie in the sky type stuff, that wasn't going to happen either. So Josh Dobbs was like a reasonable get, a starting quarterback. He's okay. Like you say, he does different things and maybe some of the things that Kevin O'Connell would like to see. And the game that I saw him play the most was they played the 49ers a few weeks back. And And the Cardinals gave the 49ers a pretty hard time for 3 quarters, and Josh Dobbs played pretty well. The offense moved the ball well, and they did some things that maybe we'll see if Dobbs ever gets in the game, but a lot of use of his mobility. They did a lot of RPOs and, design rollouts where they cut the field in half, the whole thing, and he either had the option to pass if a guy was open for decent yardage gain, or he just ran it. And that eventually the 49ers clamped down on that stuff, but it did keep the game close for a long time. And Dobbs did a pretty good job in that game. And that's the sort of thing that you'd like to see if he has to play. If Hall shits the bed tomorrow, Dobbs might be in there in the second half, or at least the following game. Right. And in Arizona is that, they've, with the talent that they have, which isn't great on offense in particular, they've been able to move the ball pretty decently. And Dobbs is, he's not been perfect, and there's been some bad throws and bad miscues and stuff. But I think that he gives them a chance to win if he's in there, especially if you get Justin Jefferson back and that sort of thing. And again, he gives a whole different dynamic at the quarterback position that we have not. A Vikings offense with Jaren Hall and Josh Dobbs in there is that ability to move, the scrambling. That's something we have not seen in 6 years.
Yeah, or longer. Teddy could run, but Teddy wasn't a mobile, quote, style of quarterback.
He was a reluctant runner.
Right. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, Tyler said I was coming in soft, and I know I've had that issue. I've cranked my mic gain up and everything else up. Hopefully people can hear me a little bit better, but we'll see. Well, that brings us to the next.
I was listening to you and Tyler earlier in the week when talking about this deal, and Tyler talked about, I think you nailed it, about how this was, this was a deal for now kind of thing, right? Like they needed to strengthen the quarterback room, and considering the compensation and the player that Dobbs is, it was a good deal. But it's not a deal that's looking long term in a way, at least as far as Dobbs go. You're not looking at him as being an eventual starter, but you needed to do something to strengthen your quarterback room now. And getting Dobbs does that. And at the price that they got him from, I like the deal.
I do too. And Dalton asked, what's the cap hit for Kirk? If Kirk does not come back, everything rolls forward, and they'll owe $28.5 million on a dead cap, if I remember the number correctly. If Kirk gets extended, he's got 4 years on the dead money extension at 7.5, 7.75, somewhere in there per year. Whatever he gets extended, say it's 1 year for $20 million, it would be $20 million that next year, plus that 7.75 or whatever it is added onto that. That is the cap hit for next year, and the rest would keep going down until they were eaten up. And as soon as he's gone, they all push forward into one lump sum of dead money. That's how that works. So, well, that brings us to the next trade.
Yeah, the Cleveland one I don't like as much. It was surprising to me. Not so much surprising it was surprising that they traded him. I feel that you always want offensive linemen. I feel they get hurt a lot. They get ankle stepped on, foot stepped on, groin, like with Darren saw. It's a tough position to play. You get hurt a lot by friendly fire, or like people doing things that, like, you don't even see coming because somebody rolls over you from behind. So as much depth as you can have on the offensive line, and how important it is to have a very good offensive line. I like to have that. So I didn't really like trading Cleveland. I certainly didn't like them trading him for a 6th rounder. He was your starting left guard 3 weeks ago. Dalton Reisner wasn't
Number
getting
8.
in the lineup. Yeah.
8th guard in all of the NFL. Mm-hmm.
Again, you can disagree about PFF grades. Yes, David, they do have Reed and Brandel. We know that. But would you rather have Cleveland in there or Brandel or Reed? If somebody gets hurt. But yeah, his grades have been good. He's considered one of the best guards, and I think that's, again, like, you can disagree with PFF's grades, but if you watch close enough, I think you'd see that Cleveland struggles at times in pass protection, I think, but I think that the grades are pretty consistent with what I was seeing with my own eyes, uneducated as they are on offensive line play. But still, so the 6th round, getting him only for a 6th rounder, a starting left guard in a league where offensive linemen are at a premium and everybody's having trouble having enough good offensive linemen. Jacksonville's a playoff contender too, and they needed offensive line help. And you could only squeeze a 6th out of them. We don't know what the market was, Dave. Maybe that's the best that they could get, and that's okay. We've added a 9th draft pick by doing this, so that's good. But I am surprised, and if Reisner goes down, or if Reisner goes down,
to have known what San Francisco wanted to give, because they were supposedly interested.
Yeah. If Reisner goes down, if Ed Ingram goes down, it would have been nice to have Cleveland where you could say, okay, Ezra, Ed Ingram's down. Dalton, you move over to the right guard, or Cleveland moves over to the right guard and Dalton stays. But anyway, to plug Ezra either into the left guard spot if Reisner was down, or the right guard spot if Ingram went down, rather than going with Chris Reed, who hasn't played all year, he hasn't been suited up all year, and Blake Brandel, who was a tackle last year, and now he's a guard. And I think Brandel's a decent backup, but I'd prefer to have Cleveland over those two guys. So you better hope we stay healthy on the offensive line at the guard position. And yeah, I think the compensation is not fantastic. I would have liked to. I think that a starting left guard, and a good one, according to Pro Football Focus grades, and all NFL teams, I think, or most of them, use PFF to some degree, so they've got access to this stuff. I think that
all teams
use it. It's surprising to me that you couldn't get a 4th at least, something around the 4th round.
But what I heard the explanations as is Jacksonville's only getting a roughly half-season rental on him, because they have 9 games, or where we're 8 games in, so they have maximum 8 games left. Not 18, 8 or 9 games
17
left.
games. You'd have 9 games left, depending.
Yeah. So it's only a rental because he doesn't have a contract beyond this year. And if you look at it as just a short-term rental, paying him higher or trading higher than that 6 seems a little ridiculous, no matter who it is, unless you're going to negotiate in exclusive rights for an extension or something like that. So he could walk. He could walk at the end of the season from Jacksonville. He could come back next year, as it sits right now, to us, and we gain that 6th rounder. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's feasibly possible. That's why it was a 6. And now, granted, it's the Carolina 6 they traded for him, which should be at the top of the very 6th round, which is, if he just walked, we'd get a 5th round compensatory in 2025, which would be what we got is only a few spots below that, and it's this year. So I think that's the thought process.
And that's the I guess the gamble that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah made in trading him was, again, like, there was the talk about the compensation you would get if Cleveland left as a free agent, you didn't re-sign him, but that's all dependent on who the Vikings signed to in free agency. It could be a wash. You could, depending on who you sign, you could get, the math could work out that you don't get the compensation pick for Cleveland signing somewhere else because of who you signed.
That applies too.
And
yes.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Vikings roster is right now, with potentially the salary cap that they might have available next year, it's unlikely that they're not going to sign, 2 or 3 free agents.
Right, exactly.
In various things.
And Jonathan, I like the way Jonathan's thinking, that it's a possible future favor, right? That Kwesi can pull in at a different time. Hey, remember when we gave you a deal on, my boy?
Yeah.
And
A discount on Cleveland, yeah.
It could be. And we do save money on the cap, believe it or not. We save over $1 million.
Yeah, well, not insignificant. If somebody, you have a rash of injuries and you need the rainy day fund needs to be as big as possible to sign some people to make up that roster. I think Cleveland being traded also, I think it obviously bodes well for Dalton Risner being the future, having a long-term future with the Vikings. I don't think they would make this trade if they didn't have plans to bring Risner back and sign him to a more longer-term deal beyond this year. And I like what I've seen from Risner. I don't think his grades, PFF grades, would be any higher, or they might be actually been maybe a little bit lower than Cleveland's overall. But I like what he brings to the team, Dave. Like, he is I like my guards particularly to be be really nasty, grumpy guys. And Risner he brings energy. You see him after a play, he's like helping guys up. The guy who carried him up, he's like diving for loose balls. He's hurdling over other players. Like, he's got hustle. He's like following the play. You know how so many offensive linemen, once they think the job is done, they just stop moving. Dalton Risner ain't that guy.
No, he's not. And supposedly that was one of the hits on Cleveland, even though Cleveland does things technically well, especially for a tackle move to guard. He does not have that fiery, I'm going to kill you every time motivation that a normal guard should have, that I see Ed Ingram with, for an example. That, Ed tries to stun you with that first punch, bam! And if you go down, he's happy. He's going to drive you into the ground. And then he's going to look for his next block. That sort of deal you want, that sort of attitude you want for a guard.
And Risner's got it. And for a team that passes as much as the Vikings do, pass blocking is his strength. So if you're going to drop back 40 times a game or more, like the Vikings do, and maybe they'll even still will with Hall and Dobbs or whoever's in there, then Risner is a good fit for that as well.
Yep. That brings us to theme 3. Vikings at the Falcons. They both suck. The Packers and the Falcons.
They do. Yes. Game preview. Slides, please.
Oh, I almost forgot.
What?
We're going to start off with the injury report. We have, for the Vikings, out Dean Lowry. Okay, I don't know if we're going to miss him. We'll find out. Linebacker Brian Asamoah, questionable. Wide receiver Jalen Naylor, questionable. Offensive guard Chris Reed, questionable. Both Naylor and Reed are on the comeback. They're in that 3-week window to come back. They may be allowed to come back. We'll find out. This will be the 3rd week, I believe, for Naylor. So after this, they have to make a decision. He either comes back or he goes on the IR for the rest of the season. For the Falcons, we have fullback Kevin Smith, who is listed as a starter, out. Wide receiver Drake London, he is their best, by far, wide receiver, out. Free safety DeMarco Helms, he's a backup, out. As we know this week, defensive end LaCale London went to IR. But the biggie that went to IR is Grady Jarrett. Andrew, JJ is eligible to come back after this weekend. So next week we might see him. Now, But as you referred to before, about 30 minutes, an hour before the show, Adam Schefter comes out with this little gem that Kristen Darisaw is moved to questionable with a groin issue.
Wasn't on the injury report all week, Dave, I don't think.
Nope.
I didn't see
and
it.
It just popped up. Now, according to it, it was from last week's game. Now, I've had groin pulls before, and generally you can play with them if you stretch them out and you keep them warm. That is a very much so. If it gets cold and it tightens up, then you're in pain and you're having problems. But there's no cold. There's no weather. We're indoors. We're playing in the Sphinxter Dome, the Mercedes-Benz Sphinxter Dome down in Atlanta. Yes, Dalton. Calais Campbell's on IR as well. I did not go over their entire IR list. It is extensive for the Falcons. That brings us to quarterback rankings, right? These slides are going to be thrown off and they're going to look really, really funky this week because we've got new quarterbacks. When it comes to quarterback power rankings for both Jaren Hall and Taylor Heinicke, PFF has none. Jaren Hall played 11 snaps last week. Taylor Heinicke played a game, but it was his first game, and they don't have enough sample size to give it to him. Mm-hmm. When it comes to QB stats in particular, we're pretty much the same. There's very little to go on. Now, however, last week, Jaren Hall scored a respectable 76.2 for PFF. Taylor Heinicke, on the other hand, scored an 80.3. That's not bad for Taylor. Now we get into these numbers. Clean pocket. Taylor was at 91%, scored a 91, whereas it was a generic 60 for Jaren. I misspelled that one. Big time throws, Jaren had none, so it's 0. We had a 4.8 for Taylor Heinicke. But like I said, small sample size, 1 game and 10 snaps. It's not worth going over. And even we get to power rankings and ratings, they're not available. They're not there. And I didn't want to do that. And when we get to DVR, it's even worse there for the quarterbacks because there's nothing to look at. QBRs, it's not there. So after this week, we'll get a little bit better numbers, but when it comes to quarterbacks, we ain't got squat. Now here, we're moving over to the offense.
Aaron thinks I have somebody breaking into my home here. My dog is
here's dogs. All right,
Aaron doesn't know that my dog barks when the wind blows.
When it comes to offense versus defense, the Minnesota Vikings offense, PFF screamed them down the board to 28th.
I don't get that at all.
They're projecting. They have to be projecting because of Hall and not because that can't be because of the first 8 weeks with Cousins. Because when we get into the offense for the Vikings on DVOA, it's ranked 14th. That sounds about right? Yeah. And it was 12th in the pass, which went up a little bit, and 25th in the run, which went down a little bit, which is about right. We saw that happen last week. You know, the run wasn't effective, but the pass was still good. And when it comes to Elias Sports Bureau, your generic box score stats that you see everywhere, NFL.com, CBS.com, ESPN.com, your newspaper, everywhere else, right? The Vikings were 10th in yards. That's a top 10 offense. Second in passing and 31st in rushing, which is an improvement on the rushing, believe it or not. But they've been around that all week. So, and 15th on points. They've gone up on points, by the way. They've taken 18 sacks, our offense. They're 29th with giveaways with 15 total, and they're now up to a -5 differential, which is a lot better than it was before. The Falcons, however, are favored by 3.5 points. It's actually gone down. They were favored by more than that at the beginning of the week. Their defense is ranked 22nd. It's nothing to write home about. Overall, DVOA, they have them at 25th. Pass, 28th. So they can be passed against. They're 11th against the run. Well, we want to get the run started tomorrow. Hopefully, they'll suck at the run, especially with Grady on IR. When it comes to yards, their defense is damn good. It's 6th. Their passing is 8th. Their rushing is 14th, which is middle of the pack. Points, they're middle of the pack. They are 26 in sacks. They've only accumulated 15 all season. And in takeaways, they're 27th with 7. The over-under for the game is 37.5 points, which means they think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Flipping the script, the Vikings defense, PFF has them at 20th. Okay. DVOA has them at 10th overall. Remember where we were last season?
How could I forget?
Or 32nd. We're now at 10th. And I can't say that the talent's any better. Right? We got rid of some old guys and we brought in a couple new old guys, and, it's relatively the same. But how it's being implemented is drastically different.
And the quarterback room is completely turned over.
Yep. And we're 12th against the pass and 12th against the run. The run game defense is actually gone very well. It's improved. I see Phillips a lot involved on that one. I liked when I saw Roy involved on that one. Bullard, right? Those big brown bellies on the defensive side when they can get stops. Dean Lowry's out. I don't remember seeing Dean Lowry in the run game a whole lot. The only highlight from Dean Lowry I remember all season when he picked up the fumble last week. So
he also batted down one pass in a game.
That's true. That's true. Now, Elias Sports Bureau has us at 11th overall for yards on defense. Not bad. 15th passing, 13th rushing, 15th points. We're 10th in the league in sacks with 23. Yay, Daniil Hunter. He's a big part of that. And we're
23.
Yep, and we're 18th when it comes to takeaways with 10. Remember at the beginning of the year, we couldn't buy them. Now we're at 18th with 10. It's improved. The Falcons offense, on the other hand, who has to face this defense, PFF has them ranking overall 27th. Not so good. And remember, they've got the new quarterback as well, and Taylor Heineke. We know our friend Taylor Heineke. Overall, they're 24th. Pass, they're 25th. And run, they're 15th. They're better in the run because they have B.J. Robinson, who we'll get into a little bit later. When it comes to yards, Elias has him 14th overall, 18th in passing, 10th in rushing, B.J. Robinson, and 28th in points. They're not scoring. And they've given up 26 sacks. That's a lot. And they've giveaways. They rank 28th with 14, and they are sitting at a -7 differential. So they're up for giving the ball away. That's a good thing. Then we get to special teams. Special teams, we're 30th overall, dropping like a rock. I can break this out by punt, kick, punt return, kick return, all that. There's one factor that's causing this to drop. We all know what it is. He wears the number 1. And then we get to the Falcons special teams. They're 26. Their kicker, Mr. Wu, is it? He's only missed 2 kicks all season. So yeah. That is it for your stat rundown, slide breakdown. Hopefully you have not gone blind with that presentation.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, you could you could go for this game as far as like keys to the game and all that stuff. I feel like it's pretty simple. It's Jaren Hall, Jaren Hall, Jaren Hall for me. Like you go from Kirk Cousins to with 12 years in the league and tons of experience and seen it all, or nearly it all, playing at, again, some of the best ball he's ever played, especially the last 2 games. And then you go to a rookie 5th rounder who has played 11 snaps in the regular season. And it just comes down to Jaren Hall tomorrow, right? Like Atlanta is one of those bad, decent teams. By that, I mean, their record is decent. But
they're 4-4, same as us.
Yeah, but you see the stats there; they ain't that good. They've been, and so really, but if Kirk Cousins was in this game, the Vikings would be, I think, 2-score favorites. I think they'd be favored by 6-7 points in this one, considering especially with the way he played the last 2 games. Kirk Cousins ain't there. You got Jaren Hall, and Atlanta's favored, and I think that's probably fair. So if Jaren Hall shits the bed and the offense just struggles and can't move the ball because of him, because of his inexperience, because he can't make the throws, can't make the right reads, then it's going to be a tough day tomorrow. So it's really all on him. In this case, and the Darisaw thing hurts quite a bit, but also, you hear talk about, well, you get a rookie, you get an experienced quarterback there. The Vikings got to lean on the run game. Well, they can't lean on the run game because the run game has been ineffective 6 of the 8 games that we have played. And I don't see that, getting any better. Okay, maybe everybody's been talking about, well, only if Cam Akers got in the ball and, became the number 1 back instead of Alexander Madison. And I wish that would be the case. But if you look at Cam's stats, he's averaging 2.6 yards per carry right now. Like, it ain't great, but limited opportunities. Got to give him that. But I like Cam. I think Cam's a better pass catcher as far as the screens. He sets it up better. He's got better hands, at least than Madison this year. So that would be a plus. But the way that Kevin O'Connell's used them so far, I don't think that we're going to see a whole big change in usage. Cam Akers is not going to supplant Madison as the guy, the running back. But even with Akers in there, I don't think that this running game is going to take a huge leap and be able to be the focal point of the offense and take a ton of pressure and heat off of Jaren Hall. Just because, for whatever reason, even though we have supposedly a very good offensive line, and I think it is, we just can't seem to run the ball well. So it's Jaren Hall tomorrow. And I'm not concerned. I talked earlier about the good things that I think, some of the encouraging things that I can see about him and that we can feel good about. But I'm not worried about the physical stuff. Like, I'm not worried about his height. I'm not worried about his arm strength. I'm not worried about those sorts of things and his ability. And if that's going to be what prevents him from being successful tomorrow, it's all the mental side of the stuff, Dave. It's like, is he going to be able to, at the line of scrimmage, is he going to be able to recognize protections and check out of plays quickly and check out of the right plays? Is he going to be able to set the protections right? Will he know when to step up in the pocket to avoid pressure and how far to step up in the pocket to avoid pressure? Is he going to be able to get the ball out just that fraction of a second quick enough, like Kirk Cousins does a lot of times, so that he avoids a sack? Is he going to be able to read the coverages quickly enough and know where to go and who to go to at the right time? Is he going to be able to manipulate secondaries with his eyes and his body to create good throwing windows, or is he going to stare down his wide receivers and make it easy for them? I think, how is he going to handle pressure? Because Atlanta's they're going to ask some questions of Jaren Hall tomorrow. Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator, is going to, when he thinks when it's appropriate, I think he's going to try to send the blitz, send the heat, and see if Jaren Hall answers the questions he's going to ask of him in a positive fashion. Those are all unknowns, but I think, again, the thinking, the mental side of the stuff, that's what Jaren Hall has to excel at tomorrow, for the Vikings offense to instead of settling for field goals and 3 and outs, get touchdowns. That's the big part of it. And again, I think that, Atlanta, like any defense should do when you get an experienced quarterback, you ratchet up the heat, you ratchet up the pressure, and see how they handle it. See if you can get them jittery, see if you can force them into bad throws. and get some easy turnovers that help your offense. That is the big thing. And in this game, and it's unfortunate what Christian Darren saw, but in this game, this is where the offensive line in particular, I think, could do Jaren Hall a solid. They've been very, very good in pass protection most of the year, particularly lately. They got to have the game of their life tomorrow. Give Jaren Hall.
They've got to protect the young guy.
Give Jaren Hall that little extra millisecond or 2 milliseconds if he's a little bit slow reacting to get the ball out, at least to avoid a sack, or get the ball out to make a good play. They've got to do that for him. Our wide receivers they've got to win on the coverage. They've got to win one-on-ones. And then Kevin O'Connell has got to, as you said, Kevin O'Connell has got to call the game as well and give Jaren Hall the plays that he's got confidence in, and that set Jaren Hall up for success. And it's a lot to ask, but like Kevin O'Connell said this week, he said, "This is what I get paid for, is to develop a game plan in an adverse situation that gives and make it work." And that's not verbatim what he said, but that's basically what he said.
Basically what he says. And it's so nice that he is doing that versus going, "This is my system, and I'm going to shove these square pegs into the round holes and make it work." No, it's great that he's doing that.
I think, so it's all on Jaren Hall and Dave. I talked a bit about the running game and leaning on the running game, but in order for the Vikings to sustain drives, you've got to convert on third down a lot. Eventually, in every offensive drive, there's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 plays where you got to convert on third down. And for the Vikings, and I think for the Vikings, and I think for most NFL offenses, that means you got to pass the ball and complete passes to get first downs. I crunched the numbers, Dave, and I don't know how shocking these numbers are, but the Vikings have had, by my count, 107 third down opportunities through 8 games. Do you know how many times they have run the ball on those 107 third down opportunities? You don't. So I'll tell you. I
don't.
They've run it 11 times.
I'm about to 11. Say it's got to be low. So 11 of 130. So less than 10%.
Yes, 9.7% of the time. And this is like, and if you take away one time when Cousins dropped back to pass and had to scramble because nobody was open, if you take away some of the tush pushes and quarterback sneaks, if you take away a couple of the drives where the Vikings against the Bears, and in particular, where the Vikings basically were just running to kill the clock, really it works out to the Vikings only have passed 5 times out of legitimate 5 runs out of 107 third down opportunities, which is like 4.6%. I think if you looked at those stats through the whole NFL, you'd probably find most teams are like sort of similar.
A little bit low in the run on the third down. Yeah.
But, it's a passing league, and offenses feel that their best chance to convert on third down, I got to have it down, is to pass the ball. And it makes sense because you only have to beat one guy usually to complete a pass. You don't have to beat 8 or 7 guys and have blocks all work and all that shit, right?
Yeah, but if you're sitting at 3rd and 8 and you only need 2, you expect your offensive line and your running back to get you at least 2 yards. You would hope.
Well, and the thing is that if you look at every third down play the Vikings have run, like basically other than a 3rd and 1, they always pass. Like always.
Wow.
The Vikings. So what I'm saying though is that if the Vikings offense is going to move the ball tomorrow, Jaren Hall is going to have to make plays with his arm on third down. It's just going to happen. And so that is where Kirk Cousins has been, especially the last 2 games, has been dealing on third down. He's been almost unstoppable. I don't think that we can expect Jaren Hall to be that successful on third down. So I'm really interested to see how the offense functions. Like you can get away with that maybe if you have a few big plays that eliminate the need for third downs, big huge chunk plays that get 60-yard touchdown pass or 60-yard touchdown run, that sort of thing,
or even a 12-yard pass, something like that.
But I think it's going to be tough. At least I feel that it's going to be tough for the Jaren Hall and the Vikings to do that grind it out 10, 12-yard play where you've got to convert 3 or 4 third downs with your arm, because Jaren Hall is not Kirk Cousins. But I could be wrong. But for him to be successful, the Vikings offense to be successful tomorrow, they've got to convert on third down. And they're going to have to do it with Jaren Hall's arm, not with Alexander Madison or Cam Akers running the ball likely. And that does worry me. But you've got TJ Hawkinson, you've got KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison. Those are guys that can really help Jaren Hall succeed by, again, upping their level of play, winning on beating their guy in coverage, and giving him a nice open targets to throw to. And it maybe it'll help the Vikings running back, like you said. You showed Grady Jarrett's out of the game. He's a very good defensive tackle, and him not being there could help the Vikings offense run the ball better than they have. But that seems like it's going to be tough. But all on Jaren Hall. On the other side of the coin, everybody may have heard, you've showed it, is that Atlanta has a new starting quarterback themselves.
Yes,
our old
do.
buddy Taylor Heineke. And you remember last year we were playing Washington, and Heineke was starting for Carson Wentz. I think Wentz was hurt at the time. And I remember back, we did our preview show, and I said, Dave, I really wish Wentz was playing in this game, because Heineke right now is a better quarterback than him, and it'd be a lot easier for the Vikings if they were facing Wentz compared to Heineke. Well, I feel the same way in this game, because Desmond Ridder was the starter, was really struggling, and I'd really prefer it if, especially this Brian Flores defense, was facing Desmond Ridder as opposed
and messing with his head. Yes.
Yeah. As opposed to Taylor Heineke, because Ridder he can scramble. He's a better scrambler, and he's dangerous in that way, but he's really struggled throwing the ball. All of his passes, a lot of short passes, dink and dunk. He's been sacked a lot, as the numbers show. Struggling. Atlanta's not scoring the ball scoring very many points, and a lot of that is on Desmond Ridder, from what I've read. So him not starting is a big disappointment for me, and probably a big disappointment for every Vikings defensive player, Brian Flores, and all the coaches. That said, Taylor Heineke has got his issues too, right? We've seen him before. He's kind of like, in a way, I feel he's similar to Jaren Hall, and him are kind of similar. They're undersized. They've got good, not great arms, and they're mobile, but not super, super Lamar Jackson mobile. Right. But Heineke is a guy that he's never really had a high completion percentage. He's usually in the low 60s, sometimes lower. Again, he can make off schedule plays. He can, if it's scramble drill, he can make some plays, but he's inaccurate. He'll miss some easy throws that he shouldn't miss, and that costs his team that he's leading to keep the chains moving. And he'll take some chances when he shouldn't take chances, especially if he's pressured. And so I think tomorrow, every game Brian Flores has brought the heat. Ain't going to change tomorrow. He's going to blitz a lot when he gets the opportunity.
Really?
And Tyler Heineke, I think there's going to be opportunities there for the Vikings to come up with some game-changing turnovers. They've been on a turnover roll here the past 2 or 3 games, and I think they really need to do that again tomorrow against Atlanta. It'd be awesome if they could get another defensive touchdown. You can't count on those, but that would help the Vikings offense immensely. Or a couple of turnovers deep or in Atlanta territory that gives Jaren Hall and the Vikings offense a short field and easy points. That's going to help immensely. And I think those opportunities are going to be there, because Taylor Heineke is a guy that I think initially Arthur Smith and the Falcons are going to want to get the ball out quickly and short dink and dunk and that sort of thing. But eventually Heineke is going to want to take some shots, and he doesn't always make good decisions when he does that.
Well, and then last year he had help from the defensive back judge that took out Cameron Bynum on the pure interception that would have been. But
now Drake London's out. He's their best wide receiver by far, and that leaves Van Jefferson, Cardale Hodge, Mac Hollins, somebody else I'm forgetting, Scotty Miller. That's your top 4 wide receivers for the Falcons. They ain't scaring anybody, even our secondary. So a big advantage there for us and for Brian Flores. Now, on the flip side, Atlanta does have 2 tight ends, Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith. They've combined for well over 50 catches and almost 700 yards. So they use their tight ends a lot. and Pitts is essentially a jumbo-sized wide receiver. But I think that without Drake London in there, that's a plus for us. And really, the guy with London out of there, the guy that the Vikings have to key on, have to stop, is Bijan Robinson from the Falcons, the rookie, the number 8th or 7th overall pick. Very explosive, very good catching the ball out of the backfield. He's a guy that when he gets it, he's a threat to take it to the house every time. And he's a guy that, averaging over 5 yards per carry this year. The weird thing is that the Falcons have not used him that much. He had 19 carries.
Weird because we see his highlights and they're like, this dude is outstanding.
Yeah. He had 19 carries 2 games ago, and he got 120 yards, which is the best game of the year. Other than that, his most carries he's had has been 14. So they're kind of splitting him with Tyson. I can't pronounce his last name, Leisure or whatever, who's averaging not even 3 yards per carry, I think. But Bijan Robinson, this could be the game where Arthur Smith says, okay, Bijan Robinson, you're getting the bulk of the carries. And if that's the case, then Brian Flores and the defense have to have a plan to limit him, his explosiveness. Now, I don't think you're going to see heavy boxes for the Vikings because they don't do that a whole lot. They'll have 7 or 8 guys up tight on the line of scrimmage, but that's just to mess with the quarterback's mind. That's not because they're trying to stop the run so much and make it easy. They're just trying to get the quarterback confused about who's rushing and who isn't.
Right, and the offensive line, part of that, yes.
Yeah, that's another big one. But I think this year, it's anecdotal. I have no stats to back it up, but I feel that the Vikings tackling defensively has been vastly better than it was last year. You don't see a lot of guys missing. You don't see a lot of broken tackles, not as much run after the catch. And that's very important when you're facing a guy like Bijan Robinson, because when you get a chance to take him down, you better take him down, or else he could be 20, 30 yards beyond you if you miss that first tackle. So really important for the Vikings to stuff Bijan Robinson, make the Atlanta as one-dimensional as they possibly can, because I think if you do that, Tyler Heineke is not going to be able to be successful enough to score, to keep the offensive running and as successful as it needs to be. And this is a game where, we're not sure what the Vikings offense is going to do. And so, it could be 17, 20 points could be what wins it for you. And this is a game particularly with Jaren Hall needing to get his feet under him, where the defense may have to really do the lion's share of the work in this one. If it's close, as you looked at special teams earlier, Dave, if it's close, I think the Falcons have an advantage here because Greg Joseph is struggling. He's missed 5 kicks, I think, or 6.
Something like that. 5 or 6. Yeah. It's all recently. It's not he started out the season when everybody else was struggling. He was good. Didn't miss anything. Mm-hmm. Now when everybody else picked up their game, he's now starting to miss.
And we have seen this the previous 2 years where he's had gone into these funks for a certain amount of time where he's not dependable, and other parts of the time where he's hitting 55-yarders, no problem. But I think right now he's in a funk, whereas the Falcons kicker is not, and has only missed 2 kicks, 1 extra point, 1 field goal. He hasn't had a whole lot of long kicks. I think his longest kick has been 51 yards. But that is in a close game. If you got a field goal kicker you can depend on, and the other team has one they don't depend on, that can be the difference between winning and losing. And right now, the Vikings can't be feeling good about where their kicker's head is at right now and how he's performing.
Narenda, and I probably butchered that. I sort of hope that's cool. I'd love to see the defense score like 3 touchdowns and the offense score 2, and we're kicking butt. So that would be awesome. Will the defense score tomorrow? Possibility.
It's always possible. It's not really something. We've already got 2 defensive touchdowns this year. That's not really something you can
bank on.
You can hang your hat on. Those tend to be more fluky than anything else. Not the plays that lead up to it, but the actual, the bounce of the ball goes right into DJ Wadham's arms. Like, how could that have worked out any better in the Carolina game than it did? There was no skill involved there.
Speaking of which, he's had a couple good games in a row. And hopefully
And
that
important that he
continues.
does, because you don't have Davenport. And the fact that, I think Wanham's playing some of his best football that he's played as a Viking the past 2-3 games. And he's got to keep it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. There's a couple things I want to talk about real quick. Tomorrow at approximately 11, 10, 30-ish, somewhere in there, right after One Bar in Lupkus, we have our buddy Justin, who's part of our network, goes live with the last-minute check-in as to, who's out, who's in. He goes live with his pregame. Hey, we got 15 minutes to go. This is the story. Let's roll. His show, make sure you check that out in the morning. And then what happens during the game, at the 2-minute warning, we go live to watch those final 2 minutes with you and react to how the Vikings did. Tomorrow, will they do great? Are we going to be celebrating Jaren Hall? Will we be celebrating the defense? Or will we be grousing about, hey, this went wrong and that went wrong and why in the heck did that happen? Well, you're going to find out. Tune in at the 2-minute warning. We're the only ones that go live at that time. Plug it in and ride it out with us. And let's see how it goes. Should be fun. Any last words there, buddy?
Well, another, source of optimism for Hall is that last week Will Levis appeared in his first game as a rookie, and he threw for 4 touchdown passes against that Atlanta Falcons defense.
Mm-hmm.
There is, if Will Levis can go in there, much higher draft pick, but still not very experienced. If he can go in there and do that against the Atlanta Falcons, then I don't know, why can't Jaren Hall?
Exactly.
It's not out of the realm of possibility for Hall to do that. And big game for both teams. But I feel at this, Dave, I don't know how others feel, but I think that I don't know. I'll feel differently when the game goes, but right now I'm we're no stress right now because Cousins is gone. What are the expectations for this team? They're pretty low. So Hall could, maybe this is like a Brock Purdy moment where Hall, with us not expecting it, he ends up showing that he can be potentially the future for this Vikings team. We could have a huge shift in the franchise's future tomorrow in the next few games, depending on how Hall plays. I'm probably overstating it a bit, but if he plays well, if he's impressive, that really changes the Vikings' view on the quarterback situation next offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's so bad about us doing well and making the playoffs with what we have? I would. Who's to say that if the Vikings right now have 4 wins? They're probably, even with what they have at the quarterback room, would probably win another game or 2 anyway. That's not going to get you probably a top 10 pick and won't give you a shot at Caleb Williams unless you trade the farm. So,
hey, there's too many bad teams.
Yeah. So, hey, just
2 of them.
I feel that there's an opportunity here for Jaren Hall. It might be the only opportunity he gets. Let's see how he does. Again, exciting and frightening at the same time.
I've repeated numerous times, there's been no 5th-round quarterback that's ever become a franchise quarterback.
There's always got to be a first time, Dave.
You got it, buddy. That's exactly what I was thinking. There's always got to be a first time. There's been 6th and 7th rounders that have. Why not Jaren Hall be the first 5th rounder? And if he can't,
let's be clear, we're not expecting that. We're not predicting that. But tomorrow is the opportunity for him to take a step to doing that. And this wasn't the situation we wanted with Jaren Hall. Perfect would have been he just sat this year, never played, just was in the lab, developed, and then next year he gets more preseason and maybe he gets a little bit of, and then by year 3 we get to throw him in there and see how he does maybe. things have accelerated quite a bit, David, and so just got to roll with it. Like, enjoy the ride, whatever it is.
Exactly. And tomorrow, we hope everybody that's watching today joins us at the live 2-minute warning, but enjoys the game tomorrow. A lot of us are watching on Sunday Ticket because it's not being broadcast nationally. It's very limited. I haven't seen the whole map, but I know everybody I've talked to, they're not getting it unless they're in that immediate Minnesota area or in the Atlanta area. So enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy your Sunday. And what do we say, my friend?
We say, SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!